Do you want to be able to do repeating events in a SharePoint calendar? If you do, you're like many people out there. Out of the box, SharePoint does not provide a way for you to do repeating events on a calendar in SharePoint. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can enable that functionality using Power Automate Workflow. I've provided all the steps. There's a link to screenshots and step-by-step instructions linked below the video, and we're going to walk through all the information in this video as well. So if you're ready to do repeating events in SharePoint, let's begin. Okay, here I am in SharePoint Online. Let's start by showing the functionality it is that we're going to create, just so we know what our goal is. So I'm going to go ahead and select an event in my calendar here in SharePoint. And you'll notice when I go up to the command bar and select Automate, Flows, I'm going to see an option here that is normally not going to be available. It's called Copy Event. This is the workflow we're going to create in this video. So when I open this, we're going to have some parameters. It's going to ask me, okay, what time span do you want to do? And for example, I'll do day time span, and interval should be 1 by default. That means repeat each day. And I'll just keep this simple. For example, just say repeat that 3 times. And that will trigger my workflow. And what we're going to see is a repeat of 3 of those events. So if I refresh my page, after a little bit of time passes, we should see 3 of those. Note that it does take a little bit of time for that to process. Now we see it, 1 p.m. Friday snacks. That is the simple concept. This workflow will go ahead and do alternating too. So I could do repeating weeks, I could do alternating weeks, and I can do months as well. So it'll accommodate all of those functions. And then additional to that, I can delete all the events in a series. So if I select this, I can go up to that same menu, go to flows, and just select delete series. In this case, it knows to detect that series, so it's just going to be a matter of clicking run flow, and it's going to get rid of all the 1 p.m. Friday snacks events that I've created on this calendar. Same thing, we just got to give it a little bit of time to execute, and there you go. You can see those got removed off the calendar. So that's the functionality we're looking to create in the workflow, and that's going to be the rest of this video. I'm going to show you how you can set that up in your own SharePoint calendar. Under the video is a link to this web page at sharepointdashboards.com. where it gives you all of the information you're going to need in order to be able to build this workflow. In fact, there are 2 workflows. There's the copy event workflow and then delete series workflow. I recommend you do watch this video first, and then when you go through to build this, you can reference this site because it has all the screenshots and code snippets that you're going to need to do this workflow. First of all, let's review how you set up a calendar in your modern SharePoint site. I'm going to go ahead and create a new list, and I'm going to call it company events. So I'm going to do a blank list, call it company events, and I'll go ahead and click create. Now I have just a plain vanilla SharePoint list. I need to create 2 fields for the start and end date times for my calendar. So I'm literally going to create a column called start and a column called end. Sometimes it acts a little finicky right when you have very first created your list. Now it's working with me. So I'm selecting date time, click next. I'm going to call this start. Be sure to enable include time. This is for a calendar, so we definitely want the ability to do time. And I'm going to also make this a required field. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the end of the event. So I need to select date time, click next, and I'll put end. I need to include the time, and I do want to make it required. That's it. Those are all the fields that are needed. Go ahead and add a couple of dummy events. That's useful for testing purposes. So I'm just going to put something in here. Workflow practice. And I'll go ahead and use today, and we'll do 4 p.m. And then for the end, I'll do today, and we'll do 6 p.m. There we go. That's it. And let me go ahead and do one more in here just so I have some events on my calendar. So I'll do new one. We'll say workflow practice 2. We'll put that on the 12th, and we'll say that's at 9 p.m. And this one's going to go to 11 p.m. Okay, so we're just doing that so we'll actually see something on the calendar when we make that appear. And then another thing that we might like to do is go ahead and sort this view, sequentially based on the start and end. So if you edit the view, we can go ahead and include that, since that would make sense for a list of calendar events. So I'll just sort by start, like so. Ascending is great. Click OK. Okay, now we need to create a calendar view. And to do that, I just click Add View, and I can just call it Calendar. That's fine. And click on that calendar tile, and you need to match up the start and end. So it doesn't do that automatically. So I'm just matching up with the fields I have, start and end. That's it. Click Create. Whoops, I forgot to click on month. You do want to set month as your default. So let me go ahead and adjust that. There we go. Now I'm on month. We do a refresh. It disappeared on me. Edit current view. There's month. There, now we're on the month view. Okay, so now I got a couple of dummy events in there. So that's creating the calendar. Okay, now we'll get into Power Automate, and what you're going to need to do is do a for selected item flow. Sometimes this trips people up because when you go to create one of these, it doesn't show up on the first screen. So I can go into Power Automate. I'm going to do New Automated Cloud Flow, and this is key. You're not going to find it from this first screen. So just click Skip. And once you do that, you'll get to the second screen. You can click Add a Trigger, and if you search for it here, you will find it. So if I do for a selected item, you're going to see it's going to pop up on the list. I can click on that, and this is the type of trigger we want. And at this point, you're on the way in building your flow. This is the type of flow you're going to need in order to be able to make this option show up here on the menu. I haven't created anything for this list yet, so I don't do anything, but that's why we're using that type of trigger condition. That's what allows users to be able to trigger this workflow directly from the user interface by selecting an item. Okay, so that's how you get the calendar created, and that's how you begin your flow. I'm going to drop back to my list and calendar that's already created, and that's called Company Calendar. And we're going to review something that's already been built. So I'm going to back out of here. I just wanted to do those steps to demonstrate how you will begin. So this is my flow, which I've already built. We're going to review all of the building blocks inside of this so you can see how it works. So I'm going to edit this, and we're going to talk through everything, so you're able to do that. Sometimes I will get an error message in this first block, but if I just refresh the page, that it's going to go away for me. Okay, now everything we're walking through in this video, you're going to be able to see that in the instructions on the web page linked below the video. I would recommend just to watch through the video first, and then you can then go to the instructions, start building your workflow to match this, and use those written instructions and code snippet as a reference. Okay, so here we are. This is the beginning of the workflow. This is the for a selected item trigger. And we need to set up input parameters. These are fields that the user provides information in when they go to kick off the flow. There are 3 input parameters that you're going to use. Okay, so you're going to select the site address and list for the calendar you created, and then our first input parameter is called time span. You're going to name it that. It is a text field. You can put the placeholder in here. I just typed select in all capitals to prompt the user. And then in the configuration options, you have the ability to show that as a drop-down list. So select text, and then from within that, you can do a drop-down. So our different options are going to be day, week, or month. And as you go through this, make sure that you match everything precisely. The only thing that will be different in your flow is the name of your SharePoint list where you're doing the calendar. Okay, so make sure you have day, week, month. Then the second input parameter is going to be a number parameter. It will be an integer, and this you will name interval. And you're going to put a prompt to the user which says multiply time span by, and then default 1. And this is how we can do alternating weeks or alternating months or whatever skip you want to do. You could do every 3rd week or every 3rd month. That's what this input does. It tells it to do a skip, so it'll jump for you. So by default, if you do 1 and it's daily, it would be every day. But if I put 2 for the interval and select day, then it would be every other day. So hopefully you can see that concept. And then count, that is a number parameter, and that's going to be the number of times you want this event copied. And you could have that, basically be whatever you want. It can handle as many as you want. So those are the input parameters for this workflow. Those are very important. All right, let's go ahead and jump to the next block, which is initializing a variable. We're going to initialize a variable called loop counter. And again, as with all these, make sure you name your workflow blocks to match what you see in this demonstration so you don't get tripped up. So even the name of the flow block itself can be important in these because those are referenced in subsequent steps. So I named the variable loop counter. It's an integer and it starts with the value of 0. Okay, next we need to do the get item block in Power Automate. And this is so we can get all the properties of the item that's being copied. This is necessary so that we can access that in the next block. So select your list, your site and your list, and then you'll just select the ID value from the first block, the triggering block. That's it. That one is straightforward. All right, now we get to the fun stuff. A big part of this workflow is detecting and calculating the time difference between the selected time and UTC. The reason we need to do that is to handle changes related to daylight savings time. And there's more information about this on the webpage you can read about. I made some notes to explain that. But generally speaking, we have to accommodate for this because if I copy an event, say at the beginning of the year and through the summer, as soon as that daylight savings time switch happens, if I don't adjust for that in the workflow, the hour will be offset by an hour. So the 4 o'clock event is going to change to 5 o'clock or go the other direction if you go from summer to winter. And we need to accommodate for that in the workflow. Luckily for you, all of that trickiness is in these code snippets. I just wanted to explain why we're doing that. So the first thing we're doing is using this kind of jumbled bit of code to tell us how many hours difference is there between the current time or the time on the source event that's being copied and UTC. So if it's Eastern Standard Time, as I'm showing in my example, it's going to show either 4 or 5, depending on whether I am or am not in daylight savings time portion of the year. But I need to know that as a way to detect for that difference. So just copy the code snippet from the web page, and now we're ready to get into the loop. Okay, so this is a do until loop, and this is set up according to that variable we created called loop counter. And what we're looking for is to do this until basically gets to that count. So it's going to do it until the loop counter reaches the count, which is the input parameter provided by the user, the workflow. As I say, you can have the count go up to whatever you want. Notice I've expanded the advanced parameters. What this says is it could be as many as 1,000. Hopefully you're not copying a calendar event that many times. And then there's an actual timeout as far as how long this workflow can run. And this just says it'll run for up to an hour before it'll just automatically stop. So that's fine. We're generally not concerned with that. That's the loop settings. Okay, so now inside of the loop, we'll get to the first block. We need to go ahead and increment our loop counter each time. If we didn't do this, it would just run forever. So this is just going to increase by 1 each time it goes through the loop. And again, this comes from what the user selects for how many times they want to copy the event. All right, next, we're going to add to that source event to formulate our new copied event. So it's incrementing the time. So we have both the start time and an end time. So we're going to reference that from the base time parameter, and then it's incrementing based on the time unit. Recall that you could do either day, week, or month. The user is going to select that, and it's going to increment using that. And then the interval, this is what was accommodating for if I wanted to do alternating days or alternating months or something like that. So there's a multiplier in there to accommodate for that. And there's a little code snippet that'll do that. So the add to time start and add to time end are very similar. It's just doing the same thing, except we're referencing the base start and end time. All right, so now we get back to this concept of the daylight savings time and the difference between the event and UTC. UTC never changes. It remains steady, and there is no offset for daylight savings time. And so that's why we're comparing to that. It helps us know whether our copied event is or is not in the daylight savings time portion of the year. So it's checking this value, and then we're going to compare against the value from the source event. Okay, so we get the difference, and then what we do is actually subtract the number of hours offset in the source event compared to the new copied event. And what will happen is either it's going to be a 0 if we're in the same part of the year, or it's going to be offset by 1 if it's an event that's being copied that's after that boundary. And that difference will allow us to then adjust the copied event so that it's correct, so that we don't have it an hour off in there. So if I go to the add to date time start, basically we're doing a subsequent adjustment to shift that by an hour if we need to. If there's no difference, it won't shift at all. And so we're just referencing the variables that are previously in our workflow. And same thing, we have a pair here. We have an adjust for the start and an adjust for the end. Exactly the same concept. It's just which one that we're using. And then we have one final step in here, which is to create that item, and we can now reference this information that we've looked up. So we can go to the invoices list, site and then the calendar list, and then you can reference the variables in there. And then of course you're just going to pass along the title. And that's it. That's the entirety of the workflow. Note that when you name your workflow, that's important. So I've named my workflow copy event, and that's exactly what appears in the user interface. So that's very important to us. Okay, now another question I've had about this is, okay, you copy the event and you make 30 events on there, and what's going to happen? Of course, there's been a change. You don't need those events anymore. You want to get rid of them, and that's where the delete series workflow is going to be important. So that's the second workflow that you're going to create. It's also described in detail on this web page that's linked below the video, and we'll walk through that now. Let me go ahead and jump out of here, and I'll go to my flows, and we're going to go to the delete series workflow. This one, luckily, is a lot simpler. We can walk through this one pretty quickly. It begins the same. It's using the for selected item trigger. So you just select that. Unlike the other one, we do not need any input parameters. It's going to be smart enough to automatically just delete all of the events in the series. Like the previous workflow, we need to do the get item to get all of the properties of the source item. And then that's going to allow us to do a get items loop to find all of the other matching events in the list. So we use a filter query for that. We say title equals title. So in other words, it's going to bring back all the other events with the matching title. Now that could be a problem for us if used on its own, because maybe there is other events that have a matching title, but they're not part of this series. So the way that we're handling that is to do a condition block in the workflow to do an additional check. What we also want to know is, okay, great, that's an event that matches the title. Is it also the one that starts at the same time? So we're getting more specific. So this also requires a formula, and this is also provided on the web page, and this allows us to do a check. We want to make sure we're just going after events that start at that exact same time in minutes with the same title. So we're getting more specific so we don't accidentally delete other events that were not part of the series. So if that matches, at that point we're good to go. We can just use the delete item flow block to get rid of those items. It'll just loop through there and find everything in our calendar list and get rid of those. So that's everything that's there. All of these instructions are provided at the SharePoint dashboard site. You can walk through. There are screenshots that show you each flow block and each step. And so you can go through there. And of particular importance, if you go through this, what I've also done is provided the code snippets, which would be very challenging to put together otherwise. So if you will, the kind of the hard work, the headaches have already been taken care of for you. Note that there's a time zone reference, and in my case I'm using Eastern Standard Time. If you're in a different time zone, that's not a problem. You can just go through the information at the Microsoft site, and they've got a whole list of different options, so you can find the one that corresponds to your region. So that's just another thing to note. And that's pretty much it. That's how you can do repeating events, and it's going to handle those tricky challenges, including the daylight savings time switch, alternating events, being able to batch delete events if you don't need them anymore, and do all of these things in the SharePoint calendar. And one other thing I should note, you want to make sure that you allow the permissions for your users to run the flow. So under run only users, you want to go ahead and select that. And within there, you can allow users who have permissions on this list to run that. So be sure to check that option, because usually you're not wanting this to be able to run only for yourself. You want to allow other users to be able to run those. And they are not going to see those options in the user interface unless you adjust the run only permissions on those two workflows. So don't forget that step. All right, that is it. I hope you found that interesting. I will admit this was a very tricky challenge to me, but something that was interesting for me to figure out. I created this workflow after doing another video that was very popular, that was more simple and had the problems with the daylight savings time switch and didn't accommodate for alternating events or deleting all the records. So I saw those comments and I really wanted to figure out how to make that work. This may feel like many steps in order to accomplish the functionality, but all the information is here and there is no alternative with out-of-the-box SharePoint. If you have this requirement and you must have the ability to do repeating events in your SharePoint calendar, there really is no other way. So familiarizing yourself with these steps and setting up this functionality using this process that's in the descriptions, this is the way that you're going to be able to get it done. So I hope you find this useful. I hope it allows you to incorporate this functionality in your SharePoint environment, and I wish you good luck.